go live. Anyone got the YouTube up so we can see it? Or just checking it on the down low. See if we're up. I think we are live. Hello everybody. Well, it's our YouTube channel. How are we doing? Okay, so let's assume we're live, right? Yeah, I believe we are streaming. Happy Paddy's Day, Happy Paddy's Day, Scar. Happy Paddy's Day, Owen. How are you? Yeah. Nice quiet Paddy's Day, yes. Everyone stayed at home. No one went. I mean, I was thinking about going out to the local riot because the main riot in town has just become too commercial. But in the end, I just decided I'd stay in and drink, as is our patriotic duty. How's your con these days? Yeah. Well, the only con we'll have to think about this year. Oh, you're... Clearly haven't been reading any rum today. And Owen, how have you been celebrating Paddy's? I was told, yeah, it doesn't, midweek Paddy's Day, of course, comes but once every 7 years, and it's neither fish nor fowl. Too far away from the weekend to fold into a long one, too far away from the weekend, the other weekend, to kind of just get started and roll it into the weekend. So, yeah, it's just been a day off for a lot of us. As transgression is a hobby for me, I am going to be enjoying a pint of fine black stout, in this case Beamish. I've got some other stuff kicking around here. We've got the Fitzpatrick mineral water, no relations, unfortunately. They're oh, sorry, it's Glenpatrick, so I've no idea. The mineral water is perfectly good though, and I could probably top it up with something at some point. But yeah, we're just on. We had an episode come out today, didn't we? It was our bracket fight, the last one we did. I think that just went live this morning, or in the wee hours this morning. Oh, Jason's on. Hello, Jason. Glad you, can you see us? Yeah, seems like we're on. Jason is joining us from the Discord. And Jason, you're producing a show, aren't you? You've got it. I mean, in the sense that any of us are producing anything. Let me just check stuff from our friends. Where is it? Because Jason's always got something on the go. Yeah, drop your... Who's monitoring what? I can keep an eye on YouTube chat. Excellent. Well, that's... But yeah, Jason has his RPG Variety Nerds podcast over on Anchor, and he's... Jason, are you still guerrilla podcasting? We last time I watched you, I think you were at a bus stop, or you're just chilling somewhere in the wide open. Right. So here's to St. Patrick, dear saint of our isle. I don't know if he was a Guinness man himself, but Céad míle fáilte, everybody, fellow party members. It's always a pleasure. Yeah. Wednesday Paddy's is. I mean, it's this. This will be my. Oh, I think this must be my fifth Wednesday is Paddy's Day. Is that how it goes? They rotate. Um, yeah, back in the virtual office in the morning, but I'd say they're mostly based here in and around Ireland, so I don't think there'll be any eyebrows raised if we all show up a little late for the old virtual stand up. Anyway, mm. So favorite St. Patrick's Day movie. We had a kind of a discussion about this on Discord earlier. Not really, but we can all think of something if we really put our minds to it. Um, sure. Yes, it would be a very small pool otherwise. That's definitely up there. Um, Culture is this. Yep. Is that the one? Tato. Is that the one with the two traveling kids, who they're two city kids, aren't they? They steal a horse, they head west, and who plays the dad? Big name actor back in the day. Um, he was in Glenroe as well, so he 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 went from the top of the Irish TV talent tree and stepped into movies. Gabriel Byrne, and yeah, Gabriel Byrne. I mean, he into the West. He went on to host a long running variety chat show, The Late Late Show, before taking up work in road safety awareness. This is same Gay Byrne, right? We're not sure. Can can you drop a link? Can you drop a link and I'll put it on the stream? No, there are two Gabriel Byrnes of prominence in Irish culture. One one was a famous actor and the other famous TV talk show host. No end of talent here in Ireland, just a shortage of original names. But yeah, can no one hear me? Right. Now because I tell you what it is. That's it's taking a while to come. It's because of the headphones, isn't it? So let me think. So we've been waffling away. They're only getting my side of this conversation. I think we may have to drop the headphones because I don't know enough about OBS. So, folks, there might be some echoes, but let's see.
You try dropping your headphones and see
Yeah.
what happens before we drop ours and create this terrible feedback loop.
So let's see. We'll ask the audience who alerted us there. Is that?
That was Mr. Lee in our own channel.
Oh, very good. We'll see if he'll give us some feedback before we go ahead. Streaming, not our forte. We nearly had the podcasting thing down, and then we said, well, why don't we stream? It's been 10 years of podcasting. We all just get around longer, yeah. And we had it down. And then we said, you know what, this is boring. Let's try remote podcasting for no other good reason.
Other than the global pandemic.
No other good
Can you hear us
reason.
now?
No other good reason. And you can hear Owen now, and we get and Shane. Brilliant. So
There we go. Fixed.
Recapping the last
The end of that chapter.
how many minutes? Based solely on what you got from me.
Of streaming gold wasted.
At least 10.
Okay, so
At least
let's go
10.
back to the top. Gabriel Byrne is actually
God.
two people.
Yeah,
Gabriel
sure.
Byrne's two people. Into the West is the best Irish movie ever made, according to Shane. We've got some counter opinions, but we'll get to those. And yeah, did you find that picture, Shane, of the poster?
I did. It's in the Discord.
Go on,
No.
narrow it down for me there. Where should I be looking?
In general chat.
General chat. Gotcha. There it is, alright. Yikes. I'm gonna pull that up. That wasn't the poster, was it?
Yeah, I was just shocked at you, but apparently.
It was probably a poster. Like, it might be the US poster or something.
It's
The one that look a bit more, jazzy. A bit like this is definitely people trying to sell them. This is a Western.
okay.
It
So
ain't that
I mean,
wet, folks.
It
ain't
was
that
about
wet.
the delusion of being in a Western.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just briefly discuss everything that's going on here.
There's a lot to discuss.
Okay, first of all, that horse has had a really top-notch wash and blow dry. That's not a big old mane up there. That's
He's coiffed.
he's going to his Debs, isn't he?
Yeah.
And
He is working it.
those look like cowboy boots on. It's also huge. He's like a giant cloud. Clearly,
Yeah.
the West is a much safer prospect than the East, as the East appears to be exploding behind these two kids. And there's a very, I mean, coming from a design perspective, there's a lot going on here. We've got some Indiana Jones stuff. We've got Wild West stuff. We've got teeny tiny heads. I think that's either
The horse's head is, of course, massive.
Oh, yeah,
That says
well,
the rest of it.
you always want to have the star's head the biggest face in the poster.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
And
a
the horse was definitely a star of that movie.
Tato. The horse was called Tato, right?
No, one of the kids is called Tato, I think.
Ah, I always get those two confused. It's a fine name for a horse or a child, or a crisp. It's the
I remember one thing about that film. That when they went to do a fire, the kids cut out a section of sod, flipped it upside down, set the fire on the sod, and when they were finished, flipped it the other way back around, so it was hard to track them.
good on them.
Oh God, I remember. And then the lady, the ninth level ranger that they probably found along the way just goes, those two boys never forgot the tricks of the travelers. And
Yeah,
it's just like,
absolutely.
that was a very 90s movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
Very 90s movie, as so many were. Other great 90s movies about being Irish: Leprechaun, Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun in Space. Many of which starred, was it Courtney Cox or the other one, who was in Friends after her film career inexplicably nosedived.
no one liked to talk about My Left Foot or The Commitments. No one at all.
They're very niche.
That's St. Paddy's Day films?
They're very niche. But the Leprechaun movies hold a universal appeal. They're very international. They've got recognisable Irish stars. Like,
They got remakes made.
did they remake some of them? Oh, they did. They remade the Leprechaun for some reason.
Sure, but not the Commitments.
How would you remake the Commitments? Probably as
I don't think you'd remake the Commitments. I think if you tried to remake the Commitments, the law would come for you.
Who wrote the Commitments? Roddy Doyle. wasn't it?
It's from Roddy.
He would crawl out of his grave, because as we know, all great Irish writers are dead. And there's no denying the greatness of Roddy Doyle, so the poor man would get up out of his grave. Probably wonder why someone had buried him. He's alive and well as far as I know. And he'd probably be down to have a word with you. He's, of all the Irish writers, apart from, say, I don't know, Oscar Wilde, he's probably the one with the most screenplays adapted from his works. Bram Stoker might get a look in there. Oh, no, wait, was Bram Stoker living in Ireland, or was he Irish? When
He was Irish enough to get in trouble, but Bram Stoker's Irish,
He was Irish by genetics, but he was an Englishman in his soul.
Well, look, if it's good enough for our soccer team. But let's face it, I mean, Bram Stoker definitely holds the record in number of adaptations, but not number of works adapted. Roddy Doyle's got a great. If you actually, we've had questions from some of our dear listeners and now viewers, who may be regretting some of those decisions across the pond about what are good representations of Ireland in movies, and the Commitments movies, the Roddy Doyle movies, the Snapper. I think they made the van, didn't they?
Yeah.
All
They're very good movies, but they're also period pieces. Is the thing. They are very much.
they
So
reflect
in
the Ireland they were made in.
80s, you know, we're in Europe, we're part of the EU, but we're still goddamn nearly a third world country. It's that sort of sensibility.
Yeah.
And
But
while certainly it's still a very big part of the Irish culture, it will feel anachronistic to just watch some of that context. I think.
Warlord Scar, you live down the road in a part of Dublin that would still feel very much like the Commitments on some days. So how far away from it are we really?
I don't know. Like I'm a Donegal boy at heart, so I've used to being in parts of Ireland that everyone not from Dublin wants to forget about. So
Donegal, of course, well represented film. The Vikings, The Lord of the Rings. Anywhere you need a mythical landscape, head for Donegal. That's what I say. Anywhere. I went to Letterkenny for 3 years as a college student, and I'd always say, anywhere you go in Donegal, you'll see something you just can't believe. Especially on Thursday night down at the Golden Grill.
I didn't know you went to LA.
Yeah, I was up in Letterkenny. At the time, their art and design department was housed in an old Victorian mental asylum atop a hill across from the hospital. It's probably still there, actually. A wild
I think it's
building.
actually it's turned back into an asylum again.
Considering
I know
Get enough art students together, someone
who can tell, yeah. That's the wild thing. We were 9 to 5, or it was all practical stuff, so we barely had any time for bunking off at all. Quite like being in secondary school again all over. It's the law students you want to watch out for. Those guys are lunatics and gals.
You know how far they can push it.
Or the nursing students. Fine profession, especially now. But it's not so much that they knew how to let their hair down as it was never put up. Used to live beside a house full of nurses. And I think the reason most nurses end up marrying guards is because they tend to meet so often. Certainly the number of times patrol cars were called to their house across from us. Plenty of options to make acquaintances. But yeah, so that's life in Ireland. How about things out in the quite idyllic neck of the woods you're from, Hida? Any good reflections of the life pastoral in we had one there recently, didn't we? Emily Blunt.
Jeez.
Mullingar or whatever it was called.
I'm not that wild. I have the distinction of being from Kildare, so I'm considered neither fish nor fowl. I'm neither a Colchi nor a County. Or
see, it's you are the avatar of Paddy's Day on a Wednesday.
Yeah, just basically the pale, just the pale there. And the funny thing is, I once got accused of saying, you're from Dublin, and I said I'm from Kildare. I was told, don't be posh. And I was like, what do you mean posh? I'm not. My address is Kildare.
Yeah.
I'm in the greater Dublin's urban sprawl, sure, but I live in an old farmhouse. It's
exactly. A grand estate it is, and yes, you've got one foot planted on a pavement with the Dublin bus sign stuck in it, and the other foot in a field. So you're definitely, I don't know, I think there's something about those transitional areas that gives you the best of both worlds.
You tend to get a lot of diversity out there. Any edge zones, that's where you go for
exactly
the greater biodiversity of muck around.
I myself am from the Wild West, as hinted at in that poster. Hailing from Roscommon, which is basically the answer to the question, well, what is it people, who is it that people from Donegal look down on? Well, Roscommon doesn't have a great rep this last few years. So,
No, a couple
although,
of rough random results went against them.
that's just politics. I'm thinking more about Moon Boy. But
I used to go to holidays to Donegal. By God, that could be a miserable country sometimes. Lovely some of the times, but miserable some also.
great national park up there. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
It is the kind of place you go to die in some ways,
One, whether you intended to or not.
Yeah, Tremendous coastline, though. Tremendous coastline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard for me to judge it because like I live next to it, and it's just like why are they all this fucking idyllic coastline anyway? All over the place.
Speaking of idyllic coastlines, I furnished myself with a bottle of West Cork virgin oak cask, finished, as in finished in an oak cask, and this sentence is finished. Oh my God, that's a long name. But yes, you can see the coastline of southern and western Cork there, or southwest Cork is the very
we're getting
remote.
a request for somebody to join in.
Oh yeah?
Liam's party.
Oh, we could tell him to jump into the chat, and we will. He'll just magically appear. It'll be seamless. Possibly the most technically adept thing I've ever done. So, fellow
edit button won't be touched.
There you go. See. And we have Tis himself.
Hello, Liam. Hello.
Liam, you might want to adjust your camera. Your murder board is showing.
That's the memory board. It's all the fond memories that the family have, my time at medieval times, and Baltimore is at the top, and, random smatterings of stuff. There's a packet of Tato from when we went to Tato Park.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got started on Tato at the top of the show. So, Tato Park. Liam, do you want to explain Tato Park to us?
I don't know if I can, so much as it's just it's a small theme park, which is owned by Tato, who are one of the largest crisp manufacturers here. But I don't think there's much more explaining to that. That's really all it is.
What can we say?
You could explain the fact that there are two Mr. Tatos, the mascot.
Well, it's the Southern Tato because it's in Meath,
Yeah,
it's in Ireland. It's firmly in the Republic.
A Fenian potato.
Free Stato, and what's the other one? Free Stato and
I've
Leg
got
toe.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've got this theory about. I've got this theory. You mentioned coastlines there, and Liam's brought in the political angle of our crisp situation. I've got this theory that
Don't get people started on Bushmills.
anytime.
I still know people who won't drink it because it's Protestant whiskey, and you're like, who cares? It's whiskey.
Yeah. But see, anytime you've got a coast, so you take a coastline, anything you can draw a coastline around, a continent, an island, a hill of earth in the middle of a lake, you will get exactly the same amount of division on a continent as you will on an island. The people from the hilly side of the island will loathe the people from the flat side of the island.
Look, it's even closer than that. I mean, do you know when you grab a can of deodorant or something like that and you quickly have a quick spray? Do you know what they call that in Kerry?
What are they?
The Corkman's shower. Do you know what they call it in Cork? The Kerryman's shower.
Cross the county line.
Whatever group we have some irrational dislike of, even though they're pretty similar to us in fairness. Like, it's not that much difference between Kerry people and Cork people. Like,
Shane, do you know why?
But they're far more common than they do not.
Yeah, that's true. But Shane, do you know where I really can't stand?
What?
Top halfers. Those top halfer guys. They're just the worst. And I'm only hanging out with you because you're a bottom halfer over here.
I feel like the knowledge might have got away from us here.
Touch my finger.
Wait, you're the other way, and you're there, and Shane is there for me. So what you're saying might be applicable to
who knows,
for everybody else.
Well, the people on YouTube are getting my view, so clearly I have the correct orientation.
Speaking of viewers, we have on the Discord from Céad, who's going back to our already dead and buried topic of Irish movies. He's talking about I Went Down. Now, has
Oh,
anyone
yeah.
actually seen I Went Down?
I don't believe
yes.
I have, no.
Chap from Father Ted.
Which is
Something-
funny because if you mention a movie, there's good odds I've seen it because my dad used to own a video shop, so I've seen a lot of movies.
Wait, no, I'm thinking of the wrong guy. Southseed, who was in I Went Down? I know there was at least one actor. Give it a name.
Brendan.
Paddy,
Brendan
director's
Gleeson,
Paddy
was it?
Bretna,
Yeah,
starring
I Went Down,
and-
an Irish gangster
Brendan
movie.
Gleeson.
An Irish
Yeah,
gangster
Brendan
movie,
Gleeson was in it.
essentially, and a
Yeah.
comedy. Because Irish criminals, if they're not deadly serious, they're some of the most hilarious people ever. If you read the district court reports in this country, some of the stories, the fellas who will get them sort of lock themselves in someone else's car while drunk, or will be found in possession of a goose, and no clear reason to have one, or maybe just become very how should we put it, tired and emotional after a day in the pub and end up getting on the wrong side of the law. Yeah, so Irish gangster movies, there's a few of them. The Guard, a great Irish gangster movie, is essentially a gangster movie. None of the gangsters are Irish, as far as I can tell. But
Yeah, it's good, and although it is
You
very
could arguably say In Bruges as well.
yeah, perfect. It's just showing if no one was already aware, that Irish gangsterism is a very national affair. We've sent our particular breed of ne'er-do-well all over the place.
sending our best. What you saying?
Just don't watch Ordinary Decent Criminal.
Yeah, well,
It's an awful movie.
a bit. That
It
was.
really is.
I'm not very good at people's names.
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey.
There was a good movie called The General, which had Brendan Gleeson in it as Martin Cowell, and then
They were both
there was a
the same-
Hollywood remake of it with Kevin Spacey, and it was dire.
They were both about the same guy, weren't they?
Yeah.
Portrayed in two very
Yeah,
different
it is.
lights. Sort of the difference between no, I've lost it. Right, I'll stop waffling and keep an eye on the.
I remember that for a while in the Wikipedia page for the 1988 Summer Olympics, someone had vandalized it by putting in Jerry Doyle's name as coming in fourth. Because that's the claim he makes during the Guard, that he came fourth in the 88 Olympics. And someone had gotten it and edited the Wikipedia page.
I would expect the Koreans.
Okay, just to recap on our chat, Jason has corrected me. It was Jennifer Aniston, of course, who appeared in the Leprechaun movies, which shot her to international
did.
fame and recognition. And let's see, what else? Who else? The Leprechaun, a few franchises to make it to space, along with Jason and Hellraiser. It's a trajectory for any.
Was The Leprechaun an Irish movie though? It's certainly an Irish American movie, but it's not an Irish movie
Well,
per se.
if you ever delve into the ins and outs of Irish filmmaking, it usually requires a lot of international funding anyway. So, can we really say any of them are Irish?
Well, what you
movies?
find a lot of Irish movies are actually Irish. They'll have one scene filmed in Ireland, one scene filmed in Northern Ireland, one scene filmed in the Isle of Man, and maybe somewhere in Wales. So you hit all four film boards to get your full funding, and you may have a movie funded before you even release it.
Hit Pinewood
The
Studios.
Huey
for-
Bowl method of funding your movie, I see.
Oh, Jason already he's seen I Went Down, or at least half it. He says it sounds like Florida. Is that in reference to Roscommon, Kildare, or Donegal?
Hard to
But there's
say.
also those weirdos that say down when they could be talking about Donegal. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, when you say going down, it's clearly somewhere south of your current position.
Well, I mean, no, it's going down
West
to
is out,
going down to Dublin.
west is
because
out, north is up,
Out.
and south is down. That's how it works.
Depending on it depends on how you orientate your. If you want to go purely by north south, then fine. But really,
Well, I said west is out.
what we have to understand when navigating Ireland is that you start from a towering precipice
Dublin.
of rightness, and you're always going down into some Sodom and Gomorrah, be it down to the town, or down to the country, or down to the city, or down to the north, or down to the south.
It's true.
Dublin occupies the not the intellectual process, the zeitgeist high ground, or everyone filters off that. But sure, you can't.
It's actually gotten a lot easier to travel around different parts of the country now because some of the other motorways and national roads are at a decent level. Whereas before, it was generally how do you get somewhere? Well, you go to Dublin and then you go to somewhere else.
It's still fairly bad. Like the trains are still terrible, but at least you don't have to. Oh, you're driving to Galway from Cork. Okay, we'll drive up to Dublin and then.
So Jason's just clarifying. It's the stupid criminal stories that sound like Florida. Yeah, absolutely. Stupidity is an international breed. And then Chris, down is up. Well, if you think about it, anyone here who's read Ender's Game will understand that the enemy county is down. That's the way that works.
Well, I mean, I would go. I mean, for one, I would go up to down.
Now we do have a county down, which is up north, which does complicate things immensely. Oh, I feel like I have a map of the world here.
I mean,
we'd have to zoom in to see Ireland, and then we'd have to take a step back and a breath to contemplate just how
if it was up in Derry or something like that, I'd probably be going down to down.
Not Londonderry, no.
Well,
has their way.
That's up to you, but that's a slash city, I believe, is the correct is the common parlance now.
Still
Derry slash L Derry.
Still hotly contested, what we should call it. My opinion is, if it's your troops in it, you get to call it what you like. So if and when we get it back,
you can also argue that 90% of the population wanted one thing. So,
well, maybe we could talk about it as being an occupied city, but but we're not a politics podcast. No, if it's your colour flag on it, just like Civ 5.
Oh, so start to the flags now, is it?
Oh, let's not talk about flags.
So the flags.
I don't have any particularly strong feelings about it, but I do enjoy winding up contractors because the company I work for does have a site there.
Oh yeah.
And anytime they're ringing in there on just put that site there up in Londonderry.
Derry? What?
Where? Londonderry.
Spell it for
Where? London? Which site in London? Derry. I don't care straw either way, but it's funny to wind them up.
like so much what we do.
We're a gaming podcast, folks.
Yeah, well,
I've got a pile of hot takes if people want to launch into.
Go on. You were talking about some news that's coming out there before we started.
Yeah, I was having a look. There was interesting one. Some people doing kind of one shot, a full little one shot, one session kind of campaign or adventures, based on it's called Teeth. It was like Night of the Hogmen is the first one they're doing. They're doing on Itch, and it's based on Forge in the Dark. It's a one-session story of you fleeing from a ravening horde of hogmen during one grim and grisly night in a cursed corner of 18th century England. Just like one-off, here's a one-session experience, and they're going to bring out their kind of full-size gaming setting Teeth in 2021. It's good to see people kind of putting together. Here's a full playable little slice of entertainment. Pay what you want for it.
Sounds like a smart approach. They're taking a pretty well-established system that's very adaptable, and they're putting out an adventure to kind of show people what they're about, and then they'll roll it into something bigger. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's certainly the idea for it.
Definitely. As I get older, it seems clear to me the chances of a big, flashy, ambitious project landing first time are low, but if you lay one brick and lay one more after that and keep going, you might just build something. So drop a link for that one. I'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah, I'll pop it in.
I've got a little. I didn't spend all my money on shamrocks and hats this year, so I've got a little bit of money kicking around for a Kickstarter back or two. We are not endorsing any Kickstarters.
This month there was a Root Kickstarter, and rather than we've been playing another Root in the house, so rather than back the Root Kickstarter, I just bought 2 of the previous expansions and a card deck.
Right.
Which probably cost me more money than the Kickstarter.
Look, it's down to what you're getting value out of at the moment. You can't buy purely what you might want to buy.
That's it. True. In 9 months' time, we mightn't be playing it. And for us, it was actually good. We got the Clockwork expansion because there's 3 of us here in the house and we're playing it. So where kind of the way Root works is you have your factions and they have different reach scores, and that kind of governs the amount of kind of domination of the board they do and much control of the board they do. When you only have 3 players, you're kind of limited on the combos of the factions you can play. Whereas if we played the Clockwork game, we can put one of the high reach factions down for the automated player, and then that gives us kind of liberty to nearly play what we want. So we're actually getting a lot of use out of the Clockwork expansion. Pretty good.
Oh, okay. And how would you rate the cardboard AI?
I mean, it's unpredictable enough actually, because the way it works is there's nearly like a 1 in 4 chance that they're going to get an uber powerful turn.
Right.
And the more you kick them, they hit a certain point. Certainly with the cats, we've only really played with the cats. If they get below a certain point, there's every chance that they might take a second turn.
Oh, okay.
Because if they didn't get to put a building out, if they don't have 5 buildings out, then they might just take a second turn, which might mean they'll put more guys out and then they'll do more battling. So it seems to work pretty well. There is a known bug with the electric Irie that are supposed to be fixed, I think, at some point, but I haven't played with them. I just heard that there's a fault there.
But is there like new Clockwork art for all the factions?
There's Clockwork art for all of them, and there's basically they each play differently. There's the Clockwork in the first Clockwork expansion. There's a second Clockwork expansion as well. There's Clockwork Vagabond. There's a Clockwork Cat. There's Clockwork there's the Clockwork Irie, and there's the Clockwork Woodland Alliance.
Oh. Speaking of Clockwork, we're being joined by an evil robot. Hello, evil robot Shane. Or have you inadvertently stumbled into the party channel? Turn on your mic. You're muted. Okay, so Root expansions.
Yeah.
I'm actually eagerly awaiting the arrival of my very limited indulgence in Kickstarter, but I did back. I think it was late last year. I backed the Bones 5 Kickstarter from Reaper Miniatures.
Oh my god!
So, that was a while back.
Keep you busy for a while.
Simpler times. Oh, listen, haven't finished painting Bones 1 yet. Decided to.
Shane says that he can't speak in the channel because it's a party plays channel.
Okay, maybe we can get some permission for him if server god is on. He might help us out there.
Yeah. I've got a scorching hot take coming at some point about my rant about RPG game design and how completely it's failed over the last 40 years. That we just failed to advance.
I just checked the box for Shane that it was checked at server mute and I unchecked it. I don't know if that works. Can you talk now?
Oh yeah, he's not muted anymore. Can you hear us, Shane? Can you talk? We heard a noise.
Should we send for help?
If you're in trouble, tap the mic 3 times.
There, you heard a hey.
Might have been an okay. I don't know.
Is it gay?
Oh yeah. We hear you now. I need to turn up the volume a little bit.
Oh yes.
All right.
This will do. This will do quite nicely. How are you, evil robot Shane?
He appears to be still.
Okay. We'll get an update from him.
Still in technical difficulties. What are you on, Mick, anyway?
This is the West Cork single malt Irish whiskey virgin cask finished.
Had it at Christmas. It's good.
You've worked down in West Cork on and off, haven't you? You've been down the coastline there.
There's a cable landing station in an undisclosed location down in West Cork.
Do you not just go down and look for where there's a big cable? Just goes like a big Cat 5 about yay thick.
They're buried and they're also optical fiber. So.
It's I mean.
Bear in mind your average Cat 5 cable will get about 100 meters. So the Atlantic Ocean is quite a bit bigger than that.
So you have to join a few more. You have to join a few of them together. Is that what you're saying?
A few repeaters. Yeah, repeater every 100 meters.
That'll do it.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Sorry to return to the topic yet again, but I've got another message in from Mr. Target.
Oh yes.
For a pure St. Patrick's Day movie, which is apparently the classic Flight of the Doves,
I don't know.
where where apparently the bad guy and the Artful Dodger from like some
This is
Victorian
an oldish
novel.
one, yeah. 71.
They chase them. They get chased themselves across Ireland on St. Patrick's Day in order to murder the Artful Dodger for his inheritance. Who's run away from his abusive stepfather Tobias Cromwell, and apparently there's a musical number set in a St. Patrick's Day parade.
Right.
That's a good villain name now. Cromwell.
Got it all, really, doesn't it? Ah, look, there we have him.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We have sight and sound of you.
Yes.
Sound? Okay, good.
Happy
And is
St.
it?
Patrick's
Can you
Day
actually
to
hear me this time, or is it going to be like the Christmas one where like you can see me talking, but actually nobody can listen to me?
No, we can hear
Well,
you.
we shall find out from the audience.
Well, it's irrelevant because I have nothing worthwhile to say.
We've been joined by our stand-in for the Artful Dodger, Evil Robot Shane. And
Have you
hold on, what was the name of that film again? Something about doves?
Flight of the Doves?
Flight of the Doves. And yeah, the synopsis sounds like some sort of Mad Libs that an English comic book author would throw out, you know, as they.
I don't know if the audience are dying to know this, but I'm certainly dying to know this. How did the vegan coddle work out?
Like partial success. Totally. Yeah,
You
like
you think about
definitely
tweaking it
edible,
as
and and sort of. Sorry.
Maybe a bit of tweaking, it'll be good.
I don't know that I've got the skill for that, but a bit of drinking and it's fine. Yeah.
So, what part of the coddle is pretending to be meat?
The rashers and the sausages and the white pudding.
Okay.
So all the bits basically that aren't root vegetables or water.
Typically, your average turnip, carrot, onion, and potato are vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like the sausages behave surprisingly well. Like they might as well be normal sausages, but like actually, how much meat is in a normal sausage anyway, etc., etc.
Fair, yeah.
Some of them gloat at saying some enormously high number, like 80%, and kind of go, "What's the remaining 20?"
we know the fact of the matter, but it's the feel of it is like this seems like an awful lot of sawdust. So yeah, I actually did have a vegan burger not so long ago, because isolation will drive you to all sorts of new and heady experiences. It was my son who insisted we get it for lunch. He had no idea. He'd insist we go to this vegan fast food place. He'd no idea. He's like 6. He's no idea what vegan.
You used to be cool.
Oh, look, I'll try anything once. Except
Some of the fake stuff is getting pretty decent. My motto for vegetarian and vegan food was generally, so long as it's not trying to be something else, it's probably going to be pretty tasty. But
like,
some of the fake stuff's getting pretty good.
Yeah, like what I've discovered is that even stuff that is pretending, like actually, the things that make yummy things yummy often aren't the fact that they're made of meat. It's the fact that they're covered in breadcrumbs and then deep fried, or that they're full of herbs and spices or something. Like, the meat aspect sometimes is quite secondary or tertiary to the yumminess. And
I mean, there's nothing particularly appetizing about haggis, but it's delicious.
I think I'm right in saying that the spice burger is vegan. And anyone who's,
You are incorrect,
Is it
which a lot of people discovered when Walsh's went bankrupt.
Oh,
So the full story with that was Walsh's went bankrupt, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, the demise of the spice burger!" And then suddenly, lots of vegetarians who had been buying it found out that no, in fact, it contains beef rusk.
well, okay, we should
So there's
give
probably
some
nothing
background.
particularly identifiable as meat in there, but there was actually meat in there. Yeah.
So a
Oh,
spice burger.
is that a
Hold
type
on, a
of
spice
bristle
burger.
I was
Hold
not
on,
aware
hold
of?
on. The spice burger, for those playing along at home, is another quintessentially Irish thing. It was invented by.
I'd go further and say it's a quintessentially Dublin thing. You don't really
Yeah,
get them
we've-
beyond the borders of the pale, you know.
We've experimented with them in the further reaches of the
it's
island.
like the Ireland singularity.
But it is. How would you?
There's at least one chipper and boil that serves them. I know that.
Yeah. They're almost nationwide. But what would we say about a spice burger? It is a collection of stuff that it's an amalgamation.
It's like a stuffing burger, basically.
Lots of spices.
Covered in breadcrumbs and fried.
And then put between two Bundy buns and out the door with you. Bag of chips in the other hand. Now, why is
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
There's no
After
bun
11
involved
pints.
here, Mick. What's going on?
Well, my point.
11 pints
is,
of Guinness and it's 2:30 in the morning, and it's amazing.
Oh yeah, it tastes great. It's a flavour bomb. Whether it was vegan or not was obviously revealed to not really. Also, it's going into the same oil as everything else. So, for the purists out there, it was never going to fly. But
including the whirly burger, or as it's known in some parts of North Dublin, the Howie burger.
But,
which is a deep. It's a quarter pounder covered in batter, deep fried.
Oh yeah.
And then served up in a burger bun with all the trimmings.
Yeah, nice. Ooh.
Sorry, can you go back to something again? How did you describe the meat content of the spice burger as beef rusk? Because the word rusk to me reminds me of baby biscuits.
I think it's basically, all the bits, when you take all the bits off the cow, right, that are recognizable as meat.
Which we assume is something you do at least once a day.
You come up with your power hose and hose off the rest. I think it's that stuff.
Right.
I thought mincing them.
No, there were. I mean, look, if you weren't looking at the ingredient list in detail, you'd bite into a spice burger and go, this is mighty. This is exactly what I needed. You were, of course, drunk. But there
was a terrible dark few months where you couldn't actually get them because Watches agreed a whole pile of fixed price contracts, and then Sterling took a nosedive, so they lost their bollocks on it, and Watches went bankrupt. Then they were taken over by Liquidator, and then after about 3 months, the spice flowed again. But it was a few dark months.
We've got a question from the chat. Has anyone had a bug-based meat substitute?
No, but as soon as I can, I think I've eaten bugs before. But I'd like to try a kind of a mealworm burger or something like that. I'd be eager to give that a go.
I feel I'd be okay with it if it was minced up and just chewed up into a nice bit of gristle and protein.
I've had crickets. They taste just kind of nutty, and they taste really. The ones I had tasted like barbecue sauce because they were in a barbecue sauce.
Like, so long as it's finely chopped, it'd be grand. I wouldn't like to be chewing on carapace. No,
it just gets stuck in your teeth like endless popcorn.
Yeah,
apparently, one of the big pushes now is cricket flour.
Oh yeah,
as a protein substitute for particularly for.
I feel like that
people
is
in developing countries.
I'm still waiting. The killer app for me is protein bread. Like no carbs, just protein, but similar texture to bread.
I've had protein bread, and I haven't had it actually. I was in the supermarket and I saw it on the shelf and was like, I could give that a go, and it surprised me. I went to pick it up, and when you got to pick something up, and it's way heavier than you expected it to be.
Right. This
thing had like the weight and feel of like a Christmas pudding or something like that, but it was clearly a couple of slices of bread. It was like, my brain doesn't understand what dark science is happening here.
So we're not quite ready for the dystopian bug-eating future just yet, but when it does arrive,
I'll give it a go.
It'll probably arrive on supermarket shelves rather than having to hunt it ourselves.
They just need to come up with a good marketing term for it. Just called new meat or something. Maybe people might raise
spice
an eyebrow.
burger. I mean, you saw spice
burger,
and you never asked yourself, well, what the hell is in a spice burger? It's a burger of spice. Okay, I'll eat that.
Apparently, it's water, rusk, which is actually wheat, onion, beef 10%, beef fat, wheat flour, breadcrumbs, rapeseed oil, soya protein, potato starch, salt, maize starch, spices, which is black pepper and turmeric, yeast extract, herbs, spice extract, modified starch, wheat flour with calcium, iron, niacin, and thiamine.
It really is more.
It's like the fact that spices is just the biggest spice and the most normal spice.
Yeah, it's got more in common with a biscuit, really.
I like that it seems to be fortified with vitamins and iron, like a breakfast cereal.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a legal requirement. Otherwise, it doesn't count as food.
I know a lot of times I like these things for like stabilizers and stuff.
Anyway, like the submarine, Irish invention, way ahead of its time. It's beat out the vegan burger trend by decades, if not if not accurately, but in part. Yeah, the turns out the young fella didn't really like vegan burgers, probably because the chicken burger was some sort of thing made from masticated mushroom. He hates mushrooms. I love mushrooms, so I devoured the whole thing. But like what you said, Liam, about something, you think it's going to be one weight, you pick it up. I held this burger and ate it and thought, oh, this is going to be a certain way, and bit into it. It was like biting through nothing at all. So they've got the taste down, definitely tasty, because frying things, covering them in breadcrumbs, as someone said, the battering, all good, but they need the density. If you don't have the density, you don't get the carnivores.
Density in itself and unexpected surprises can be a problem, because I don't know if anybody remembered listening to that compulsion episode from years ago when Shane ate that deep fried haggis.
How did that
and
go?
discovered the increased density somewhere in his digestive system.
You're familiar with the China syndrome?
What a meltdown.
Land shrimp, as Willie Neely was.
Yeah, but it's difficult to replicate that texture of finely minced gristle in a vegetable format.
Like a kind of a chewy sand.
So were you talking about gaming or something?
Briefly,
No.
very briefly.
I think it's just general chat.
Let's throw back to Owen, who probably will talk about gaming if we let him.
Absolutely. I've got a scorching hot take coming at some stage.
Go on.
about how
So the
RPG
failure
design is.
of RPG systems. Now this is the entire rotten edifice, right?
I think so. Or I certainly think I see some, but I keep watching games like.
Please don't be about D&D.
All over the shop, trying to retreat back to older game design models and go, let's go back and do this again.
Like Renaissance.
Watching it happen.
Is
No,
this
but
the
not
nostalgia
that way.
milk?
Yeah, and that's worse than that. They're going back to old mechanics. And I
Ah.
mean, if you said, just for an example, I want you to imagine this. Someone sits down and says, I was playing this amazing game session of board game last night, and we'd all set up, and we started to talk about our characters and what we wanted and what our factions were going to do, and we're just talking about it and running through what might happen, and it was amazing, exciting. And the best thing about it was at the end of the session was so great, we'd never touched a piece of the board at all. Would anyone say that? Would anyone be like, oh, that's so true. That's so true. That's so true. The best games happen when you don't play them at all and you just do other stuff around it. Kind of in and around the hobby, but not exactly there. No one's going like, I was playing Magic the other day, the best game ever. We just started thinking about the combos we could play and talking about the ideas for them. And the best thing was we never played a card at all. No one would do that. No one would do that. Everyone would be looking like you had two heads if you went to the CCG community and you started talking about the best game ever was the game where you didn't play the game. Or the best board game ever. 40 years ago, if you go back 40 years and look at board game design, board games 40 years ago are nearly unrecognizable from board games today in terms of balance and interactivity and what they're doing with the hobby. You go back 20 years, we're looking at Settlers of Catan coming in and completely changing how we looked at games and how games should be made and point scoring and everything else. Then we go 20 years now, Settlers is a bad game in comparison. If you went back and you looked at 5th Ed D&D today and go back and look at AD&D, you would be like, yeah, they're similar. They're similar. There's some modifications. It's like modernized some stuff,
Oh, so it
But
was about
very
D&D.
similar thing. Crazy to me that we're not advancing. That we're not getting there was this whole thing for a while. They were looking at looking at the narrative and gamist sort of ideas, and that was kind of knocking around for a bit, and it's kind of mostly gone. We've kind of got traditional games which are just doing the same stuff we were doing 20 years ago, and then a little bit of kind of story games which are trying to kind of push away from mechanics. And I'm looking like where are we really pushing the cutting edge of gaming mechanics here? Where are we looking at? There's a couple we're kind of pushing ahead a little bit and looking into what happens if we keep the math really tight, when we can kind of predict some of the outcomes a bit of the game. Because so much of it just leans on the GM to fix anything that goes wrong. It's crazy.
How complicated can you get with your maths when anything beyond straightforward addition of maybe 2 numbers is too mathsy.
If you look, nobody says, or very few people will say things like, oh, all these card games, I just can't keep track of all these different effects. Because card games have refined design to restrict the interactions down to something that's sensible.
A lot of that's very visual, and a lot of that there's play aids and like there's very clear delineation of it. Like
GM screens did nothing wrong. Sorry.
There are play aids, but why aren't we doing more of that then?
What was that?
Why aren't we expanding the game?
Even Robot Chain.
Yeah. So some people who are affiliated with the Adventuring Party have done like a lot. I would say even a weird amount of research into the demographics of who's playing role-playing games these days and who the newcomers are and who's coming back to it and so on. And like it might not be the 18-year-olds growing into it that you would expect. But like the indie games was the new hotness for a while. Probably not the couple of years ago that I think it was. It was probably more like 15 years ago. But anyway, like I gave them the old college try. I would say I had a good old stab at that, and it was broadly unsatisfying. And like it was not giving the good results and feeling that, for want of a better term, proper role-playing games did. And I think, well, I wonder if maybe it's that like, maybe it wasn't broke. Maybe it doesn't need to be overhauled. Maybe role-playing games as they were was great.
Was part of that not though your expectation? Because like I kind of get the feeling, correct me if you're wrong, that you are more of a campaign gamer. That you're kind of your ideal play would nearly be a campaign play, and a lot of times indie games aren't really suited for that. They are your couple of session games.
Con games, one shots, and a lot of the LARPing that I do or have done has been one shots, and so I've played some sort of fairly high production value one shots that use kind of Nordic, for want of a better term, mechanics of like there'd be downtime breaks, even though you're all still in costume and in a weird place, and it's all very evocative and everything. But you'd go to somebody and speak in your normal accent, in your normal manner of speaking, and say, I like the thing that our characters sort of hinted at having going on there, and I'd like to expand on that, and I think we should have a fight about it, and if you don't mind, I'd like to lose because I would like to have an opportunity to, under duress, reveal such and such. It's good, but it's not as great as when that stuff happens naturally, and maybe, the sort of traditional style of play probably didn't result in those moments so often, but when they did result, they were super great.
Well, that's the thing, it's like, I think the point about expectation and thing is relevant. It's like, yeah, you can make the point that something is more valuable when it arises naturally through play. But I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to swing play to try to get more of them. I don't think that necessarily is inherently bad. It's just you're trying to focus on a different thing. And I do think the point is like you raised the point of like these newer games they felt more artificial to you and you weren't satisfied with that approach. But for someone who's newer to the hobby, maybe they that doesn't feel artificial to them. Maybe it is getting them what they want faster. I don't know.
Okay, let's pull this back to something that Hida was saying at the start, which I happen to agree with. There is it's hard. You have to dig through an awful lot of let's go back to the way it was muck to find the real interesting mechanical innovations. I think there's innovations in other places in terms of how we craft stories and in terms of how we manage a table. But I think there's lots of systems here and there that show promise, but the people who should be leading the charge aren't really doing so. I've often thought, I often wondered why.
Look, Hollywood doesn't make avant-garde cinema, it's.
But Hollywood innovates. I mean, you wouldn't have the spectacles, the technical announcements that we have now if Hollywood wasn't pumping big money into making amazing stuff. I mean, I think don't blame the cat for not being able to bark, but Hollywood hunts better mice than it used to. I'd love to have seen when the wheels were really on for the CCG stuff and everyone was playing a CCG of some sort. The closest I think we got was the WoW CCG that had raid decks, where you were literally engaged in RPG combat against the big boss as players. You build your own and you had your own character, all the rest. Like, why stuff like that hasn't more fully sort of bled through into the way that RPGs are being designed mechanically. I think there's huge potential there. I've seen lots of little upthrusts of innovation that are largely missed because our attention is on, who have we lost? We lost Shane, one of the Shanes, but our attention is on companies that are pandering, because they're saying, oh, we're just like we were 20 years ago, we're just like we were 40 years ago. Dead end as far as I'm concerned. The Nordic model, I do like. I think it is important for everybody to be involved in shaping a story and to be aware of how stories have beats and how characters have arcs and how look, the mechanics are an artificial simulation. The stories have an artifice to them as well, but artifice isn't necessarily bad. You can sort of think about how you'd like to take your character, or how you think maybe your group should move through a story that isn't just a validation or a power fantasy. And that Nordic style, I think, sort of plays towards that. But ultimately, I think we do perhaps look for mechanics that will satisfy our needs and show us a new way to play, and we should look for the other aspects of the role playing side of role playing. It's probably always going to be sort of a looser, more free form thing where things arrive organically rather than being pushed because it suits a shape of a story. I've kind of said two different conflicting things there, but that's the tension inherent in collaborative storytelling. You're not in solo command of your character's arc or the events in the world.
I mean, for me, I think that the reason why we don't see it as much in role-playing games than CCGs and board games is that in board games and CCGs, those mechanics are absolutely 100% core to the game. Whereas I think for a small section of players, the mechanical resolution is important, but probably for a larger section of the game, the interplayer interactions and the setting is probably as big or bigger than the conflict resolution. And as long as I think for a lot of people, as long as it doesn't get in the way and it runs relatively smoothly, it's okay. So that's why they're like, well, roll a dice and add a number, as opposed to, I roll this and I consult this chart and that lets me know how good or bad my success is.
So chat has weighed in. So William asks a very good question. Have we a vision of where the glorious uplands lie? My answer to that was, yeah, make role-playing a CCG. Jason,
I do that. I genuinely do that. But
Jason says when WotC tried to innovate with 4th Ed, they were chastised and retreated. And then, well, it's same with FFG's Woofrup. FFG, and I think, was that 3rd Ed Woofrup where they brought in the...
Big fan of both. Big fan of both. 4th Ed was
right.
poorly calibrated, and FFG's Woofrup was a first draft that struggled because they needed to tighten up a bunch of stuff, but you never get that in the first draft. Your first draft is always going to be messy and sloppy and have a bunch of ephemera that need to be trimmed back. And like once you actually, I could have seen a 2nd Ed version of that being, or a second version of that being an insanely tighter game, but they got scared because everyone complained about the components. And the components were one of the best parts of it.
Well, they were hard to get, and also games are cheap.
Yeah, they are. They're very cheap.
I have a lot more disposable income now, but at the time when that came out, I was a cash-starved student. So I was like, you want me to buy one set of components that will only do my character, and if they get killed, I'll have to get a whole separate set of components?
No, you didn't need you bought the core book, and then you bought a player pack, which is just the core dice and stuff that you needed. It wasn't you could reuse it. They weren't one off.
Hold on a second. Maybe it's just on my end.
Oh no,
Scar, you
sorry.
still with
No,
us?
Yes, I
There
am.
we go.
I'm sorry. I had a Discord hiccup, dropped my camera feed, and I forgot that I needed to restart it.
A
Sorry.
Discord hiccup should be a cocktail. I'm very fond of cocktails. What would we put in a Discord hiccup?
Lads, I haven't had a pint of Guinness in months. This is fantastic.
Oh
I
yeah,
was-
I'm hitting the Beamish tonight, so figured just
See,
What happened? What
be a
happened to
bit
the
different.
Western Cask Super Deluxe Gin?
I'm hitting it too, and it's whiskey.
Stout with a whiskey chaser is phenomenal, but I do have to work on the morning, so
The gin is only for martinis. I mean, you don't drink gin straight unless you're very fond of crying. Anyways,
one of the things that got that idea rattling around my head was that
Oh, yeah.
Céad had published a survey which said that the majority of new players were after the role playing experience rather than the gaming experience, and I sat there and I thought about why that might be,
I could take a
and I
guess.
came up with two kind of reasons. One of them was that they were modeling their behavior about how they'd seen it played. It was all about the character interaction.
Bloody
And
Matt
the
Mercer.
second reason I thought was that when they're playing it, it's an astonishingly mediocre play experience. That you're fighting big barrels of hit points for monsters, and most of them you just chop down, and you're not really in much danger. People get knocked down, you just healing word them back up, and they're playing a very lackluster play experience. And then I was comparing, I was thinking about, okay, I've been playing a lot of Destiny recently. We've got kind of a clan going, we're playing in a group, we're doing the raids. And raids are really difficult, but the rewarding feeling you get after completing one, after failing a bunch of times, is huge. The endorphin rush is real. And RPGs have never managed to find a way to produce challenging content that says, unless you are X good, you don't get past this point. You lose, but you get to try again.
Tomb of
but
Horrors.
failure
total play.
Yeah.
typically isn't fun.
It did happen.
Well,
Yeah,
the problem
briefly.
with the thing is that
that
failure is
comes down to
typically
a person
fatal.
has to do that to you.
Yeah. And the GMs lack the grit for that because it's too hard to reset.
Well,
And it
so-
takes too long to reset.
This is interesting because we obviously come from a very Western tradition of role playing. I remember reading in a magazine, I think it was Arcane, if anyone remembers that old horse, way back in the day, published in the 90s, I'm going to say. And Arcane talked very briefly about Japanese role playing, where they have a very different approach to characters and story, etc. You will take a named fixed character who has a viewpoint and an attitude, and you'll play through a written scenario. Okay, so far so mundane. But in the Japanese tradition, people tend to replay the same scenarios over and over. Sometimes with the same characters, sometimes switching to another character to get a different viewpoint. But they will experience the same story again and again, go through the same fights again and again. And I believe it was built on a D&D engine, so nothing extraordinary technically. But their approach to the game was one where they were exploring stories from different angles, and they were running through the same mechanical aspects, and presumably getting better, getting tighter at it, getting more knit together as a group as they learned a role well, or swapped role and learned how it worked from the other side, and became better at running through scenarios, much like as Owen was talking about running through raids in a computer game or high level content. And we don't produce anything like that in the Western sphere in terms of role playing games. Maybe we should. Maybe we should so if it's a good enough story that it engages our
There are some
narrative needs-
set-piece theatre LARPs that are very much formatted like that. That there are a set number of characters, and the game will unfold pretty much the same as each time.
Yeah, and we traditionally look at that as being like, oh, why would I play more than once? I'd be bored. But maybe by digging a little deeper, we can find maybe we don't write scenarios that are good enough, and we should. Yeah, I think there's in fact, I suspect the Murder Mystery Weekend might be the prototype for this. That could perhaps be fitted more to our sensibilities. So a few more orcs, and one murder is a bit too few, right? We can have a few more murder. Let's have the participants do all the murdering. We'll call them adventurers. But it strikes me that there's fertile room for improvement there. It just requires not only that the companies who make the games change, but that the people who play them in a different way and approach them with a different attitude. Let's see who else is.
I feel like
Shadow
there's
Frontier.
probably a deeper discussion to be had about should we be focusing on like short experiences versus the long campaign play, and is the process of grinding through 10 levels of content before getting your final victory against Lich or the Lich, is that the equivalent of your destiny? Some people would argue yes, but clearly Owen would argue that
I think Owen's point is that
it's-
that Lich or the Lich fight probably isn't any more interesting than any of the other fights you went through. Maybe a couple of because it's not designed to be any more difficult, really.
Like, I just think there isn't enough selection pressure on players to raise their game. No one is made to play well. Like, other gaming content says, if you are not good enough, you get no further. I'm sorry. You need to try harder for this bit.
I mean, I've been
effort.
in those groups where I am the player at the table, and people are making bad choices, and I am giving out to them or going, look, you have to stop messing around here and get serious here. That guy's dead. No, my character's dead in 2 rounds. You need to get up there and get that flank in and start getting stuck in. That makes me a bad player. I'm telling people what to do. I'm armchair quarterbacking and stuff, and yes, okay, we will probably all get massacred. But this is the kind of it's a weird dynamic because we've all kind of agreed, we've all kind of played this game, and we're signed up for this thing, and there are the challenges that are there, and we're there as a group to try and overcome it. But
so
how much am I entitled to push down their fun by letting them do what they want to do in order to make sure that we get to the optimal solution?
But does anyone produce the game that facilitates that says there is an easy reset mechanic, right? There are ways to replay everything, right? It's just, it eats your time. You want to progress, you have to be so good. Does any game do that? Does any game set out its challenges like that? Say, no, unless you are a certain minimum threshold of good, you're not getting past this. Because other games do that, and everyone accepts that and raises their level or stops playing.
Okay, well, let's look at role-playing games as like, they've got the name "game" in their name, but like they're not a game in the way a board game or many computer games are. They're partially a game, but they're partially interactive theater and improv and that kind of thing. And maybe the amount of it that is something that we kind of forget about because it says "game" in its name and there are dice, but. I don't know if the game you're talking about exists because I have got no interest in that. Like, there are computer games that I play that do that, but I mean, I know your tastes in role-playing games are very different to mine, but
I'm not asking for every game to be like this. I just like a small number of them to be like this, so there is that space available for people to
it seems like a pretty niche thing for somebody to be looking for when they sit down at a table with a group of friends to play a role-playing game with a game master.
I mean, I'm going to say straight up, Céad, I'm a bit of a weirdo in that I love when I roll on a table and I get a result. It says consult this other table or roll twice on this other table. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Now, most people hate that. And I'll admit most people hate that, but it's my particular quirk or whatever you want to say.
Those people haven't played Dune.
The dynamic tension in role playing is always that someone threw the maths kids and the drama kids into the same room and they came up with something to do together. And,
what was the thing you said to be on when I was saying that the people don't like numbers?
That's the thing in the Irish gaming scene. Like East Coast Ireland, or I don't know if this is the case anymore, but it used to be the case that East Coast Ireland was like, especially amongst the college
engineers and
gamers,
programmers.
It was like the engineering and computer students, and West Coast was the drama theatrical students.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, that's the. Oh, we've gone full circle. We started by talking about people from up and down don't like each other.
On the
Chat is waiting.
the difficulty thing.
Go on, Shane. Scar.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry, I've been trying to speak for 10 minutes. Sorry.
Okay. All yours.
I'm just thinking like the way that Owen is pitching this. It's just like it does remind me of the claims made by the OSR movement of encouraging better play by removing mechanics and forcing good play as they see it to be had by people engaging with the fixture, and that like you can't just roll a d20 to get your weird plan involving two planks and a bell to kill the dragon. You have to ask the GM where the bits of the pit are and place them properly, etc. Like certainly something they claim to do, but but you're making the point about the reset mechanic, and then that's one of the things the OSR doesn't have. Is it doesn't have let's try again. It has make brand new character, start from level 1 and grind up again, and it's you getting better, not your character, and that's I can see the point they're trying to make, but I've never quite bought it. I don't know if player skill can. Player skill is a very nebulous thing when you're talking about whether you could beat a mechanical challenge or a world challenge, as you might call a monster, versus the role playing challenges. And I think it's very difficult to say that a certain type of mechanical mastery skill is better play as opposed to being just better mechanical play.
I think what makes me think about that one is the classic. I cast create water inside that guy's mouth and he drowns. It's like, okay, that's great. Why is this cantrip more powerful than a second or third level spell? Okay, you were clever and creative with it, but you got to put the foot down at points.
Well, I'd push back a little bit there, Warlord. I mean, I don't think he is saying that mechanically astute or adept gamemanship is necessarily better. It's just that we'd like to see it served at least once with a product in the market by people who are paying attention and care. On that point, chat.
I mean, there are killer dungeons and stuff out there. Like
chat throws back then. So, William's making exactly the point you're making, Scar, that you have a big time investment in your character. So always the narrative pressure, the flow of a game always pushing forward. There's no space for a reset or reversal. Dead is dead. You lose the thing you've put most of your time into, your character. And then Jason, of course, opines that, 5th Ed Hardcore Mode by Runehammer, great channel, check it out. It does have a reset mechanic that allows you to build these super hard encounters that signpost of the players so they know to drop a reset anchor, and then they go in there and they'll get wiped, learn the mechanic, come back out and start again. And it's complete artifice, but if you've got a world with teleportation and resurrection, why not have a temporal loop when you're going in to fight the bad guy? Make it cost something for the party.
I see that idea, and I immediately think of Dark Souls, which is a very good thing to take inspiration from. But Artifice is a very
terrible
good
board game.
Oh yeah, Dark Souls, the board game franchise that we know so well.
Too grindy.
I have an idea as to where the stumbling block on this might be.
Yeah.
In a computer game, which is the, I suppose, obvious other side of it, if you mess up and die, and I don't know Destiny at all, but I'm assuming that if you mess up and die in your raid, and it's because you messed up, then you can kind of go, fair enough, let's have another crack at that. Role-playing games almost always involve dice, and if you do everything perfectly and you get bad dice, you're not going to walk out of that going, let's have another go at it because I think I've refined something. You're just going to feel frustrated and angry.
Which is why you might start by
alone.
dice.
Right.
You might do that.
So, So talking about computer games, like what's jumped into my mind now is that I've just entered the 21st century by playing an Assassin's Creed game, and that's got a plot that inherently involves an easy reset. Is this the kind of thing you're thinking of? Because this is super interesting.
I think you could put together an RPG which is deliberately incredibly difficult. You cut out most of the randomness, not all. You can have some randomness. In any computer game there is some randomness, right? And you go, right, this has a certain. You make it easy to reset, quick to set up, quick to play any encounter, but they're difficult. You have to find out the right way of doing them, and there is a joy and a challenge on doing that. Talking about a mega dungeon, I had great fun. I played all 3 of the Bone Keep modules in Pathfinder, and I played the first 2 at Gen Con, and the third one came along to GaleCon, and I sat down with a friend of mine, and I said, right, I'm going to build a character for this, because the last 2 times I played this, I had to play a pre-gen, and it wasn't very satisfying. I am going to build a character. Now let's think about everything we can do to counter this dungeon. I don't know what's in the setting. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's have a sit down and a good hard think. And we sat down and we spent 6 hours planning what we were going to do. We planned out our characters. We grinded up our characters to level 9. We had, okay, this guy covers this weakness. This guy covers this weakness. And any other 4 schmoes we get with us be grand. We get this equipment. We get these enchants. We get this stuff. We went in and we waffled the place. Because we went in ready. And it was great fun. We came up with an idea. We said, okay, what are the big tricks they use to get us in Pathfinder Adventures? This, and 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 this. And we came up with an idea.
There was this trivial fight.
Yep. We came up with an idea and executed it. All before the thing. I just want a little slice of the gaming space, the traditional RPG space, to be like that. You have to go, right, let's think about this bit. And GMs take it easy on players because it's too hard to reset. It's too hard to go again.
You want your GM to be the evil, sexy GM from that Jack Chick comic, Dark Dungeons.
Don't have to be sexy,
I
but
know
they
what
could
you
be,
mean.
But they could be tough, and you can be.
I mean,
there is a dopamine hit of overcoming a difficult challenge.
Some games could do it. You could certainly fit it into a lot of existing games. I guess if you were to look at, say, Warfrup, you could just go, okay, guys, I'm going to take the gloves off and I'm going to ramp up the difficulty in all these fights. And if it's get pasted, everybody burns a fate point. We're back in there. We reset. There's one of the gods is messing with you guys, and you hear Slaanesh laughing or something like that, and then you wake up again the morning of the last encounter you just had or something. D&D, I mean, if you wanted to ramp up the challenge in most versions of D&D, it hit stuff at level early. A lot of the times that'll be enough to make your encounter significantly more difficult because it'll be CR'd for. You might be like, okay, well, most fights will be your CR. Maybe the more challenging one will be 1 or 2 points higher, and incredibly difficult with 3 points higher. You would then convert that to be 4 levels higher, which will be absurdly difficult. But maybe you'd have some kind of reset mechanism, gives people a one-off currency or something like that. It will be the plot MacGuffin that would allow you to do it, but it's possible to integrate it. But I guess, no system has done it natively as part of it.
I'd just like to make a point.
I do think the point about randomness.
Go ahead, Shane.
Hello? Sorry,
Shane, you think about randomness?
Yeah, I think is the key point here is that people, it is considered a very important part of this sort of Dark Souls or Destiny reset is that it's about execution and choice as opposed to risk. RPGs tend to be about risk management. It's just well, if we do this, this, and this, as long as we don't all roll 7s, we'll be fine. And then everyone rolls 7s and they wipe. Whereas, with a video game, it's very much about skill of execution. And randomness is still present because, game designers want to make sure you're not complacent, but it's generally much smaller effect. So you do need to think about mechanics that are very much more about, it's about choice and execution as opposed to just picking up a piece of plastic, which is it's tricky because it also strikes me as having the issue of game design and encounter design, because like encounter design is already something a lot of GMs struggle with. But like if you're going for this sort of super hard thing, then like how does a GM know that they have made something that's hard but fair as opposed to something that's just impossible?
I think
So
you need really
your
encounter
opportunity
design
to teach. Yeah, you need to teach encounter design as part of it.
Be internally consistent. Shadowrun, like any Shadowrun module, has got a corporate skyscraper or whatever that's got magical defenses and cyber defenses, and it's got security cameras and guards and maybe some cybernetic monsters and stuff like that. And it's internally consistent. So as long as you know the setting, you kind of know what to prepare for, and you are going to spend 6 hours, like in an ordinal Shadowrun game, having a good think about how to approach it. It's just that you won't get a second shot.
What if you did a Shadowrun adventure, which is just breaking into a really tough skyscraper, and every time you wipe and die, you flash back to the planning session where someone goes, okay, that's not going to work, they're going to get us there. And you keep going like that.
Yes.
And then you design a ridiculously hard
Has anyone played Blades in the Dark? But no, to your point, Prince of Persia video game did it. It was a brilliant narrative trick. As soon as you died, you heard your character go, "No, wait, that's not what happened. Let me just go back." Also, other point, you said you spent about 6 hours planning this waffle stomp, Owen.
Yeah,
6 hours. That's a good campaign. That's a good length of a game where no one rolled any dice. Now, I've never heard that before. Now, we've gone through a lot of circles, but one circle, the big circle, is the clock face, and we said we'd do about an hour and a half now. So I think we definitely have sowed the seeds for a few episodes to come. Our chat has weighed in, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff we'll have to go back and consider. But time is running out for Paddy's Day, and I think for this stream. So in the hope that we'll stick to something like what we said we'd do, I think we should draw a line at this point. Oh, I mean, okay, we've Hobby Horses aired. I'd like to say one thing. Cyborg Commando did nothing wrong. It's multiplication is within our grasp.
Who are you arguing with?
Well, I do remember the thing Owen said to me, which was, some people think there's a war on Christmas. There's not, but there's definitely a war on maths and RPGs.
There really is.
Okay, on that note, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody out there. Especially these 4 windows here that have joined me this evening. It's been absolutely great to see you all. We've had a good old time. We've raked over the coals of some dead discussions. We have ignited new fires of debate, which we'll probably be hot walking across in the very near future. So let's, from my point of view, from our audience's point of view, let's go clockwise from the top, and we'll get some goodbyes. Eva Robot Shane.
Gosh, I love Owen's idea as a thing to happen to other people who aren't me.
Hey, Owen. Sorry.
Thanks, guys. Great to see chat with you all, and I swear to God, I will drag you all kicking and screaming into a genuinely difficult RPG.
Liam.
For the record, people, let's find some crazy equations. This is what maths is. Simple numbers aren't maths.
Scar.
I have drunk too much rum of it. It's all your fault.
Hey!
What can I say? It's the Irish spirit in us. It's the spirit of the Irish without.
Or in my case, it's the Guatemalan spirit that it's in me.
Ireland and Guatemala have so many touch points in common. It's more than I could possibly go into in this outro. So, thank you very much. We've been the Adventuring Party. This has been St. Patrick's Day. This has been our St. Patrick's Day special for 2021. Céad míle fáilte, Sharon Olahan, Cockamillish, good night.
Well, can't come dull get you Laris.
Well, I know I need to. We should have had some intro music queued up for this.
For the record, Mick, that's what a submarine cable looks like.
That's a very big needle.
Well, like, that's the width of a human hair. That's the fibre. So, it's,
Yeah, checks out.